Well, 2017 is a big year for the New York Lottery. It turns 50 years old, and the lottery, as you know, is a state-run operation that exists as a result of a constitutional amendment.
Now, of course, the original purpose of the lottery was to raise money for education. But over the past 50 years, the lottery has kind of been a consistent target out there from lawmakers and other stakeholders who say the system simply isn't helping education as much as it should be.
Tonight, 2 on Your Side's Danny Spiewak is digging into the numbers in this special report, showing you where your lottery money is really going.
Every once in a while, you'll see people like Gina Ortiz on the news, cashing in after a miraculous lottery victory. In 2013, Ortiz won $1 million after buying a ticket at a gas station in Tonawanda.
I still don't believe it. I still don't believe it.
You can always spot the lottery winners. They have big smiles on their faces, oversized checks in their hands, and New York Lottery logos planted behind them during their news conferences.
It was amazing.
Other than the big prizes, though, the New York Lottery has always seen itself as part of a larger mission. Back in 1966, when Nelson Rockefeller was governor, voters approved a state-run lottery system under the condition that the lottery's net proceeds shall be applied exclusively to or in aid or support of education in this state. That was the deal. Even if you felt uncomfortable with the gambling, spending money on the lottery was supposed to help kids in the long run. All these years later, that's still the New York Lottery's message in its ad campaigns.
Every time you play a New York Lottery game, a portion of your sale goes to aid New York State school children.
That's not false. The lottery money is given to districts just like any other type of state aid, and it's based on size and income levels within the district. Since 1967, the state lottery system has contributed a total of $61.29 billion to public education. This year, the lottery raised $3.27 billion for education, including $196.7 million to public schools in Erie County alone. Buffalo Teachers Federation President Phil Ramore is aware of these numbers, but he's been studying the lottery for decades, and this is what he's concluded.
It's just a ruse. It's a shell game. They're saying, well, we're going to take this money here. Yeah, it's all going to go to education, but we're going to pull back on our share. And they're just basically robbing our students.
Ramore sees the lottery money as a crutch for the state budget, a replacement, if you will, and not the additional source of revenue it was intended as. In his own report to state lawmakers this March, Ramore wrote about the theft of lottery funds. Here, he argues that the state's contribution to school district revenues hasn't grown like it should.
They can say, yeah, every penny of the lottery money is going to education, but the dirty little secret is that it's using to supplant money.
We heard similar criticism from two state lawmakers on totally opposite ends of the political spectrum. Republican Assemblyman David DiPietro of East Aurora and Democratic State Senator Tim Kennedy of Buffalo.
The lottery was supposed to fund education, and now we're looking at a small percentage of it that actually goes into education.
That promise, although it's been met, has only been met in part, and we can do a heck of a lot better.
The majority of the revenue goes to prizes, not education. To understand the criticism, you really have to see the numbers first. This year, the New York Lottery raised $9.7 billion in total revenue, but only about a third of that, $3.27 billion, went straight to public education. Last year, lottery money was only 14% of total state aid to school districts. The New York Lottery's spokesperson pointed out to us that the latest state budget increases education spending by more than $1 billion, continuing a surge in school spending that has lasted several years now. The lottery is certainly a part of that and might even help prevent the state from having to raise taxes. Still, the New York Lottery is the target of several active bills in the New York State Legislature, including from the two lawmakers we've just introduced you to. Senator Kennedy sponsors a bill that would increase the percentage of lottery revenue devoted to schools. He estimates it would boost funding for Erie County schools by $51 million.
It's actually specifically written to say that the change in the equation, any new funding will go directly into our children and their education and their future.
In the Assembly, David DiPietro is a multi-sponsor on a bill that would ban the use of lottery funds for any purpose other than education.
Everything gets commingled into the general fund, then gets dispersed, and they take the money out and pay these special projects, and they call it education funding, and it's really not, and that's what we really want to tighten up.
The New York State Lottery spokesperson says it cannot comment on proposed legislation, but Ramor sees the proposals as a partial solution to a much larger problem.
That's a step in the right direction, but they really need to start addressing the inequities of the funding for poor school districts. I'm not just talking about Buffalo, I'm talking about rural school districts as well. The inequities in the funding between rich and poor, they shouldn't exist.
The state Senate bill to devote more lottery revenue to education is currently under consideration by the Racing, Gaming, and Wagering Committee. The Assembly bill to tighten the use of funds for education is in the Ways and Means Committee. So, Mary Alice, it really doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. They're both on top of this issue, and they have been for years.
And what do you think? Does this legislation have the support of, broad support anyway, of legislators?
You know, I think it would, but it's obviously not the top priority at this point for state lawmakers. There's a lot going on as we've got about 6 weeks left in the session. But certainly, you know, this is something that's been on their radar in Albany for years. You know, just one example, Mary Alice, I was doing some research, and this came up in the 1994 gubernatorial campaign between George Pataki and Governor Cuomo's father. So they were talking about this specific issue that we're talking about right now, whether or not the lottery was helping being used correctly by the state. So it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, but we'll continue to follow. Great report. Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.
Scott?